Welcome to Camp Constitution Radio. This is your host, Shurtleff, and I'll be joined by my guest, Reverend Stevie Kraft, in a few minutes here, but I just want to mention that we are heard on WBCQ The Planet every Monday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and these programs will be archived on the Camp Constitution YouTube channel. This is our second program, and campconstitution.net is the website if you'd like to learn more about Camp Constitution. It is an all-volunteer association of freedom activists. Among the things we do, in addition to having a radio show, is to we have a printing press, Camp Constitution Press. We've got some books that we publish. I'll be talking about one in a few minutes here. We also run a week-long family camp in Heritge, New Hampshire. This year's camp, 2015, will run from July 12th to the 19th, Sunday afternoon to Sunday morning. And it's a family camp as well as unaccompanied minors. The things we do, we have some incredible instructors like the gentleman we'll have on here in a few minutes, Reverend Kraft. We also have field trips. We'll be taking a field trip to the original Tea Party site in Boston, the Tea Party Museum, as well as the State House, and a hike up Mount Monadnock, and a lot of great things. A few of our guest instructors this year will be Mrs. Chris Ann Hall and Tom DeWeese of the American Policy Center. Reverend Kraft wrote a book a few years ago entitled America's Dynamic Duo, Morality and Freedom. And it's just a brief book. It was about maybe 70 pages. And in the book, he lists the excerpts of all 50 states' constitutions, the preamble, including the more recent states, Florida and Hawaii. And all of them have a strong Christian, or I should say at least godly, perspective. And I'll give an example. Here is Hawaii, 1959. We, the people of Hawaii, grateful for divine guidance, establish this Constitution. Massachusetts, which is the first and oldest Constitution that's still in effect, I think, in the world, not just in the United States. We, the people of Massachusetts, acknowledge with grateful hearts the goodness of the great legislator of the universe in the course of his providence, an opportunity in devoutly imploring his direction, and his is uppercased. So, and you can just look at all the states here. And what we did was we reprinted the book under the title America's Dynamic Duo, Morality and Freedom, and then Camp Constitution's Dynamic Duo, Reverend Garrett Lear and Reverend Stevie Kraft. And what we did was Reverend Garrett Lear, who's another one of our instructors, has some various writings on the different topics, and we put that in the front, and we simply just reprinted Reverend Stevie's book. So, Rev, are you there?
Yes. How you doing?
Hey, how you doing? Yeah, I was getting a little nervous. I didn't hear you there. So, well, it's a little cold where I am. I'm doing this from Boston, and it's about 10 degrees, supposed to go down to about 10 below, but where the show is broadcast out of Monticello, Maine, and Monticello, the first three letters, middle of nowhere. It's a beautiful area. It's a beautiful area of the country, but it's a little cold. It's a lot colder than it is here. So, hey, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Al.
Yeah, we're glad to do it. Folks, I regard Reverend Kraft as a national treasure, and I would say almost international, since you have been traveling to Africa on various missionary journeys. But Reverend Kraft has been a fixture at Camp Constitution, the summer camp, since, I think, 2010. And you usually come up with your wife, and you are the featured instructor. And I was just talking about your book, The America's Dynamic Duo, and one of your specialties is America's godly heritage, and, of course, the need for not only revival in the land, but the need to have without morality, there is no freedom. So let's maybe talk a little bit about your background, a little bit about yourself, and your involvement with your mission, morality and freedom.
Yes, Hal. Thank you. Speaking of Camp Constitution, I wish it was July, and I wish we were back there right now. It is brutal. Even down here in New Jersey, it's supposed to go to 5 below with the wind chill factor tonight. So tell all your listeners, stay bundled up and stay warm. I can imagine how cold it is up in the state of Maine. But anyway, yeah, I'm Reverend Stevie Kraft. Al Shurtleff is a dear friend of mine, and I've been involved with Camp Constitution since 2010. It's an excellent camp, and I would encourage and highly recommend that families bring their young people up so that they can really begin to understand what our great nation is comprised of. Getting back to basics, I'm 71 years old. I was born and raised in New Brunswick, New Jersey, been in New Jersey in all my life. But however, I went to service, went in the Army, U.S. Army in 1964, and being a black American during that time, there were a lot of racial issues, and I got caught up in that madness and began to harbor a lot of animosity, a lot of resentment, a lot of anger, and a lot of hatred in my heart for Caucasian people. But I didn't realize that the problem was staring me in the mirror, because the Bible teaches that the man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And as a result, coming out of the Army, I got myself involved, went back to New York City, got involved in drugs, became a drug addict, not realizing that there were great consequences in trying to self-medicate to bury and put away the pain that I felt and the anger that I felt. Fortunately, God was good to me and brought me out of drug addiction. I was a drug addict, a heroin addict from 1965 through 1976. 1977, I had a born-again experience. I grew up in the church, but I did not know the Lord Jesus Christ. But after that experience with narcotics for all those years, when I finally decided that I had to stop blaming others for my situation and take responsibility for my own life, I went to a drug program, a Christian drug program, got my life back together, went to Bible College, Central Bible College, Springfield, Missouri, received in 1993 a Bachelor of Arts with a minor in pastoral counseling, and from there went to Harvard Divinity School, Cambridge, Massachusetts, completed a Master's in Divinity in the area of religion and society. Now I look back on that experience, and even though Harvard University has strayed from its original foundations, like I heard you read before, how the Massachusetts Preamble of 17...
Yes.
We, the people of Massachusetts, acknowledge with grateful hearts the goodness of the great legislator of the universe in the course of his providence, an opportunity, and devoutly imploring his direction, unquote. And as a result of going to Harvard, I was able to understand exactly how the enemies of freedom are operating even today. And that's the reason why those of us who love America, those of us who want to see America restored, we really have to begin to get involved in bringing back principles of morality, principles of Americanism, principles of freedom, and realize that unless we get back to those basic freedoms, tying them into these timeless truths, we will lose our nation.
Well, one of the things that we stress at our camp program and in the material that we publish is that without morality, freedom is impossible. And one of my favorite quotes is from John Adams, and I think you show this in your PowerPoint presentation. John Adams wrote to some militia officers in Massachusetts while he was president, and he said it's a one-page letter, but he said that our Constitution is, he's talking about the United States Constitution, is for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate for the government of any other.
Right.
And I think that is really one of our big problems, is that there's political parties and there's different groups, conservative groups, liberal groups, and they're all having issues, infighting and Tea Party movements and so forth. But without that, the moral factor, everything we do is in vain. And right. I firmly believe in that. And our mission at Camp Constitution is to help get people to understand that. And even though it's non-denominational, we've got people from different backgrounds. So our job we're not a church-based entity, but we are full of people that are from different churches, and they need to take this information that they not only do they have to internalize it and live it, but then they have to teach it to others. And
exactly, Hal. Matter of fact, looking at that quote that the second president, John Adams, said, you read the second part of it, the first part of it, quoting him, "We have no government armed with power capable of contending with human passions that is unbridled by morality and religion. Avarice, ambition, revenge, or gallantry would break the strongest cord of our Constitution as a whale would go through a net. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other," unquote.
That's right.
I'm glad that you quoted him, because and I fear for my nation today, because what we have today is a post-Christian nation, and unless those of us who love our nation get back to the true foundation, because the scriptures is clear, if the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? And what John Adams saw prophetically way back then was the simple fact that even though we've only had one constitution throughout the history of our nation, we are now at a point that because we have turned from God and forsaken God, our Constitution would have no more effect than a fishing net would have trying to hold back a whale from going through it.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Right. So I'm glad you made that point up, because what we have now are people in high places that are totally ignoring the Constitution, either ignoring it, going around it, going under it, writing executive orders, and what have you. I saw just a few hours ago on the Internet, whereby when the current Speaker of the House was reinstated in his position for 2 more years after all of the furor of to get him replaced. Yet the very people who we just elected to send to Congress, they haven't been in Congress one day, and already they flip-flopped. Conservatives, so-called, who were sent there to not only try to impeach the current occupant of the White House, but also to get rid of the rhino who is the Speaker of the House, and they couldn't even get that done. They flipped.
That's right. It's and many times, though, these freshman Congress come down there, and they're surrounded by senior staff people that are appointed by the Republican, or whatever party, in this case, the Republican Party, and they pretty much run the congressman or congresswoman's office. They do all that, tell them how to vote, and if you don't vote for Boehner, then you're going to be given you'll be given maybe a committee or some insignificant subcommittee. You'll have very little influence. So they do that very early on, but that doesn't mean we give up, and that doesn't mean that that some good things will happen. And maybe some bills will be defeated. Maybe a couple of bills that should pass will pass. But what our job is to keep on educating people. But one of the things we do, outreach events. I know you've been participating in some of them, homeschool shows and fairs at information tables. Now, at a homeschool show, you're going to find that the average person stops by the table, regardless if it's a student or a parent, they're going to have a better understanding of history in our Constitution. Right. But if you go to a county fair, and that's sort of a microcosm of society, you get people from all backgrounds, middle class, blue collar, what have you, and we have a 10-question quiz that we give to people. And take our quiz, you get a free Constitution. So it's a little pocket Constitutions that we make available. And it's amazing the number of people who have very little idea of the most, I call it the freedom, the owner's manual for freedom. That's your Constitution, right. U.S. Constitution. And they don't know simple things. And then you ask them a really tough question, like who represents you in Congress? And they look at you like you've got, like they don't even understand the concept.
Right.
And my son is with me many of these times too, and I'd say, what's the percentage of people that don't know? And he's guessing, he's 95%, maybe a little bit less than that, but a high percentage of people that may agree with us on many issues. And I'll sign that petition to Congress to stop, repeal Obamacare. But who's your congressman or congresswoman? Who's your senator? They have no clue.
Right.
And that's why we're losing our country. And it's in the churches, too. The churches are totally negligent, by and large, on this issue,
right.
because they're so afraid. You see, we talk about separation of church and state. Well, when your church has a tax 501c3 status, and that's buying your silence, you are in essence a state church, and you're doing the bidding. You exist because the state acknowledges you as a church. And when I mean the state, I could refer to the federal government as well as the local government. And they bought your silence because you're worried about, or if you're a pastor of one of these churches, you're afraid that you may say something that's going to turn some of your supporters off. Maybe a few of your congregants don't agree with your position, and they leave the church and they take their money with them. So a lot of times the church is what we need, and I think it's I'm trying to see if this quote's in the book here about, here it is. This is a quote from Garrett Lear. When one person stands up, it stiffens other people's spines.
Right.
And that's what happens. Take a stance. You know, there's a pastor in Troy, New York. He's got a nice Baptist church. He has it's a thriving church. You have young and old, black, Hispanic, white, and he gets up there. He gave an AR-15 out, a free raffle. You know,
mm-hmm.
You know, this is in New York State where they're doing their utmost to confiscate the firearms. He's taking a strong stance, and you know, if people come out, they respect that. And so get the lukewarm. Get the lukewarm out. Let's get the people who are on fire in. Yeah. So, and I know a man out in the Ohio, Columbus, Ohio area. He pioneered a Christian radio station, and he set up a board of directors, and he was on fire. You know, he wasn't just. It's important to preach the gospel, but he was also urging Christians that this country was founded by Christians.
Right.
We are relegating our responsibilities to the humanists. We're giving it away. And so a lot of his programming was about Christian citizenship, and that's one of your ministries.
Right.
Well, after so many, and they were doing well, they were successful, but the board of directors, they end up getting rid of him, the founder of the station, because they were lukewarm. And they were afraid of turning people off, and they were afraid of being politically incorrect, and maybe a few of the advertisers will yank their advertisement. Well, go ahead and take their money. Go ahead and yank it. And by the way, Camp Constitution Radio, on our website, we have a sponsors page. If you go to campconstitution.net, you will see a whole bunch of people out there that are businesses that sponsor our site. One of our sponsors is the Socha Sign Company out of Chicopee, Massachusetts, sochasign.com. 3 generations of sign makers, wonderful people. Bruce is the man who runs it. Give him a call or go to his website, sochasign.com. So we do encourage people to help. If you have a business and would like to be a sponsor, just give us a call. Contact us through our website. We're also on Facebook, Camp Constitution. We actually have 2 Facebook pages. We'd love to have your help. We'd like to expand this program, not just on many venues. And also, we do archive these shows on YouTube. So you can go to Camp Constitution's YouTube channel and get this copies of our program. So, Rev, we're going to get you up here, hopefully in April, up in the New England area. But you also are available to speak on these topics. And one of the topics that you specialize in is race relations.
Yeah. And
we've had a lot of problems, obviously, in the last several months. Ferguson, Missouri, and New York City. And we were talking earlier. In fact, we were doing an earlier show, but somehow it didn't record, so we had to do it again. But you were talking about black-on-black crime.
Yeah.
And just in Chicago, the alarming amounts of murders that are going on, hundreds, every week, every few weeks.
Yeah.
And these people, they're referred to as black leaders. I don't know how Al Sharpton was anointed by the black community as a leader. He's really been anointed by the corporate press as a so-called black leader because he doesn't show any leadership. But he and folks like Jesse Jackson, they don't address the black-on-black crime. They take, and I'm not justifying any police brutality. No, I don't think any reasonable person is, and we know that it does happen, unfortunately. But that doesn't give me or give anyone, I mean, if a cop pulls me over and drags me and whacks me in the head, that doesn't give me the right to go out there and advocate mayhem and revolution because of the actions of one or a few people.
Right.
And you know what's ironic? Many of these same people want a police state. They promote policies, the NDAA, the surveillance state. They want more gun control laws. Well, if you have more gun control laws, you need more police. We have Obamacare. You have to have a much more powerful means of getting money from the taxpayers. So, on one hand, they don't want police. On the other hand, they want a police state. Well, you can't have both.
Well,
so why don't you address it from your perspective?
Right. Well, my perspective is basically what you just said. In one of our camp brochures that we use every year, and I use it every time I go out and speak, it's called Back to Basics. And basically what it says is when morality declines, the abuse of rights increases, and more government is necessary. Just as criminals need jailers and domesticated animals need herdsmen, and immoral citizenry needs a police state. If we ever abandon our morality and adopt instead the law of the jungle, we will lose our freedom. See, there's always an issue behind the issue. And the issue is not Black Lives Matter. The issue is not I can't breathe. The issue is not hands up, don't shoot. The issue is there is a concerted agenda and effort that's been going on since the fall of the Tower of Babel to destroy the United States of America and build a one-world government that will have a satanic leader that the Bible calls the Antichrist to take over with a one-world government. This thing's been going on since biblical days, one generation after the other. And what people who love this nation must realize and understand is that we are in a spiritual battle. The Marxists, those who want to see this country fall, you brought up a good point, Hal, when you mentioned on one hand, we say kill the police, and then on the other hand, we need the police to protect us from ourselves. That shows the listeners right then and there that there's a much bigger hidden agenda than a few cops killing a few thugs. It's much bigger than that. What is going on is there is a concerted effort to destroy the United States of America and then bring the United States into America in with the rest of the nations to create this one-world government.
And one of the things they want to do is to have an international police force.
Right.
And a national police force, but also a standing world army.
Right.
In fact, you remember the LA riots in the wake of back in the 90s, there was some terrible riots after a policeman was acquitted of roughing up they pulled over, a guy was going about 80 miles an hour, he pulled him out, he resisted arrest. Rodney King, I think. And some of the pundits, some of these elitists were advocating a national police and foreign troops coming into our nation to police our communities. Well, and they were doing this approvingly. This is what they wanted.
Well, we saw this right in your neck of the woods in Boston with the Boston bombing, where they did a dry run and locked the whole Boston area down just to find one kid hiding inside of somebody's backyard.
Well, that was interesting because that day, now I was in Maine at a rally on the day of the bombing, and it's interesting that I believe that some of the enemy deliberately puts ridiculous stories out there, like some of these people that were missing were nothing more than veterans that were laying around, paid to lay around, because that young Chinese gal that was killed, she actually was a member of InterVarsity.
Right.
She was a young Christian student, and she was well known by the folks that where our camp is. I didn't know the young woman personally, but I knew some folks who knew her very well. And the boy, the little boy, I did know him personally, but my wife has a daycare business, and some of the parents knew their parents. So it hit home, and one of our camp counselors was across the street when the bomb went off. So what happens is they enable these two people. I don't know all the details. The case is going on today. I mean, it's January. It was going on, but these people came over. We're allowed to come in this country. They somehow got radicalized in a mosque in Boston that was given money by not given money, but the mayor, the late mayor, Mayor Menino, gave them a sweetheart real estate deal. A couple $1 million worth of land for pennies on the dollar, and they radicalized these guys. They built a couple of low-tech bombs, killed some people, and then several days later, they're hot on their heels, and they locked down the city. I was picking up Larry Pratt, Gun Owners of America, he was at a hotel near the airport to go to Lexington Green on April 19th, where we commemorate the famous battle there, and there was 30 or 40 police. It was like driving on a Sunday morning. It was a Friday, and the streets were empty. It was amazing. To look for one person, they had something called shelter in place. One person can be very dangerous, but I don't think you have to stop flying airplanes or over your airspace and lock down. It's not just the city, but the greater Boston area. Millions of people couldn't go into. We're not allowed to go here or go there because of one person hiding in a boat in the backyard. So that was definitely and the people were applauding these special police. No one knew where these guys came from. They all had machine guns showing up in these militarized vehicles, and so definitely. That is the goal, as you point out correctly, is to destroy our country. We're going to have race problems, and the way to do that, the way to cure that is through the heart. Because exactly. I was caught up in the forced busing, and the way to stop that is through acceptance of Jesus Christ. And when you realize that we're all made in God's image, that for me to hate a black person is a sin because I'm sinning against God.
Exactly.
Anyway, we only have a few minutes left. We have just about a couple of minutes left. So if you could make a final comment.
Well, the final comment I'd like to make is, depending on when this show is going to air, as most of your listeners probably will know, there was another major attack in Paris today where the same thing happened. See, these situations are well thought out, well planned for one purpose, to basically destroy people's rights to free speech and destroy people's rights to for self-defense through our Second Amendment. And these things are well thought out. I just finished seeing on TV where those Islamic terrorists actually knew what time those 12 people were going to be in their regular weekly board meeting at one time in the staff conference room. They went there and shot them all dead and made a clean getaway. This stuff is well thought out, it's well planned, and at its root, your listeners must understand that we are in a spiritual war. And the only weapons that will work in a spiritual war are spiritual weapons. So the only real answer that's going to save our great nation is a spiritual answer. And we find that answer directly from God through the greatest politician that ever lived, King Solomon, when he said these words in 2 Chronicles 7:14, that if my people will humble themselves and pray that are called by my name and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, saith the Lord. Then I will forgive their sins, and then I, the Lord, will heal their land. Politics will not get it because we keep seeing over and over we support and elect so-called good, so-called American-loving, godly people. We send them to Washington, and they're not there a hot minute, and they flip them around. They flip them over. So we have back to God.
All right. Well, Reb, thanks for coming. Thanks for listening to Camp Constitution Radio. God bless.
God bless. Have a good day.